Today I'm solving a big problem in my sewing room that's going to help me be more productive and enjoy sewing more. I'm going to be sharing with you some solutions that I've used for storage that have worked really well for me in the past, and I'm going to undo some storage systems that I think many of us are guilty of using, and it's going to make a big difference. It's probably my second biggest complaint about the setup of my sewing room. We'll get to the biggest complaint in a little bit. I often get asked how I store my PDF patterns because I do sew primarily with PDF patterns, and this is a storage system I love and I'm not going to change. I store my PDF patterns folded into these cardboard mailers. They measure 15 inches by 12 inches, and then I slot them into my kallax unit. I have them organized by designer, and I've color-coded the designer, and I do the name of the pattern. If I have a pattern or several patterns that aren't of a single designer, I put them in a miscellaneous cubby and then file them together. I know where to go looking. I found this to be easy and efficient. And for me, if it's easy, I'm going to keep it up. I did say that if it's easy, I'd keep it up. And that's where I'm going to get into the big problem I'm solving in my sewing room. I have a big sewing room, and so that means sometimes I don't use all my efficient systems because I have space. That becomes a problem because then my space is taken up in an inefficient way, and I'm losing flexibility, and I'm also losing creativity because it weighs on my mind. I used to use PDF plotting exclusively, and the patterns came all together in a big roll, one on top of another on top of another. And it was a real chore to unroll them and pull out the individual patterns to fold and store and put away. Occasionally I would put off filing my patterns because A, I just didn't want to do it. It was a big old chore and I could lean them in a corner. Or B, I thought I was going to get to it right away. I might have clamped it on a hanger, hung it in this closet over here to my left. I'll show you that in a little bit. And I would forget about them. I would turn to the next shiny thing and I would sew that instead. So I do have a big stack that I'm going to fold and put away. And how I fold them is I take each individual sheet, I fold them sheet by sheet, and then I will label on the outside of the sheet what the pattern piece is so that if I need to access it later, I will be able to quickly and easily find it. Then I put it inside the envelope. And you'll notice here, I've written it in pencil. I'll do that first, especially if I'm folding a whole bunch of them at once. And then later I'll go to my label maker and I'll put out the custom tape per brand, designer, and then I will do the name of the pattern and slot them away. I love this system because not only is it protecting my patterns, but it's easy to flip through and find what I'm looking for, and it's easy to put them away. I have since switched to the PDF printing company that I'm using, and I'm having my A0 patterns printed at Tape Free Patterns. They send them to me already packaged in an envelope, folded, and on a thinner piece of paper, all for about the same as what I was paying for PDF plotting. I have no personal affiliation with Tape Free Patterns. I just really like them. I am standing next to the second biggest irritant of my sewing room setup. It might be something that you are doing, and that is I used all these storage containers that I already had on hand, and I was trying to make them work for my sewing room. While I was patting myself on the back for not going out and buying new things, I didn't realize the impact it was going to have on my space and the storage for the house. So one of the problems with using these is I have all these awkward sizes that didn't particularly fit on a shelf and that they didn't stack too well together. It's super duper awkward and it took up a lot more space. The other problem with it was some of these containers, the bigger what I needed for sorting and organizing primarily my fabric stash. There were some stabilizers and other things. What I ended up doing was I purchased some more containers that were uniform and that I could get on a set of shelves and really use my space efficiently. So I'm now storing on shelves over here most of what I need to sew, and have freed up a lot of room in the attic space, which is just over here, and that's important. It's important for me for efficient storage of my sewing things and being able to get things very easily, but also this is the main storage for our house, and so I have non-sewing things stored here, and it was tight, it was a little bit of a jumble, it wasn't efficient, and I was wasting space trying to use something that wasn't working. So let me take you into the attic space and show you how some of that is changing up. This is the attic space off of my sewing room. This is all sewing related on this gray shelf. Over in the corner, I used to have more of those shelves. I took them out and put them in the closet and was able to move the suitcases over here. I have my sewing books, some non-sewing related thing. I have a bin of toys. Over here in the blue, I have an enormous box of French terry sweatshirting fabric. I'm working on sewing down that stash. And in the green, I have my quilting cotton that I use for craft. At the back of the closet, let's come in here. Most of that back there is not related to sewing. It's some storage for the house. And I have the shelves here, which are not that efficient. So I'm going to come in here and spend some time weeding this out. I've got some things I'm really happy with how it's organized, and some things that definitely needs better organization. Before, I had all those big empty plastic bins in here. After I did a fabric stash, I had empty bins, and after I did some reorganizing. So all of those bins are going to go somewhere else. And then here's the sewing room. By moving the gray shelf into the closet, I reclaimed a lot of space that was just wasted floor space. On the top shelf, I'm able to keep my extra sewing machines, and on the bottom, I have bags for my volunteer work. I can go and pull them in and out very easily. The other thing that was the big improvement in that closet was I was no longer hanging patterns across the bar, and I was no longer hanging the work in progress or the garments that I want to refashion. This took up a lot of space, and because it got all tangled and projected out, it was really hard to step inside the closet to reach the things I needed. Evidently, I'm not a big fashion refashion person, so I did not need to give that prime real estate to those garments hanging on the rack. I folded them up, I put them in a blue basket on the shelf, and I can access things that I readily need very easy now. My thread, I like to store in a thread box. Let me know if you are a thread rack or if you like a storage box for your threads. I've found that it's just as quick and easy for me to go to the closet, pull out the container, and get my thread than it is to keep up with the maintenance of a thread rack. It was not the solution I thought it would be, 10 years ago when I bought my first thread rack. I have reverted to what I started, and that's thread in a box. I still have a lot of work to do on my storage and going through things, but I'm well on my way. I'm regaining space, and I'm regaining my ability to be flexible. Now, my inflexibility is my number one irritant about the setup of my sewing space, and that is having all the non-sewing related things that come and work their way into the sewing space. So I'm trying to be reasonable and to accommodate the things that are both of ours and that need a good place of storage. by emptying out some of the things that I wasn't really using or was taking up a lot of real estate in the finished attic area next to the sewing room, I'm going to be able to store those things better and they won't be as intrusive into my sewing space. I still have some work to do. My main sewing machine is in the shop, so this is the perfect time for me to do a deep dive in organizing. I will update you, and I'm going to do a sewing room tour when it's all complete. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you soon.